Bon fête nationale, listeners. Happy Bastille Day. This is Technology Blows. Welcome to Technology Blows, the techno-pessimist podcast that believes your head should stay attached to your body. We're a little controversial there. We think all else being equal, just keep those things stacked up like normal. I'm Dan Slimman, and with me today is my guest, my friend, technologist, painter, Frenchman, Johan Romfort. Welcome, Johan.
Thank you so much, Dan. I'm Johan.
I'm really excited to have Johan on the show. Johan and I talk only about, mostly about computers when we chat with each other. And now we're going to talk about something that is not a computer, but still a very important piece of technology, the guillotine. What do you know about the guillotine? How much do you know about the guillotine, Johan?
Hmm. Uh, it cuts really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, French invention has been quite used, right? Like, very effective at what it does,
Yeah.
I would say. And fast as well, right? Like, it's fast. It's probably painless, I would
Yeah.
assume. I haven't tried it.
Really? Yeah. You didn't just like, oh man, I wonder might be therapeutic today. You know what? I'll build a guillotine. Yeah, there's some debate. But well, we're not going to talk about it too much on the episode. But there was some debate about whether the guillotine actually is a painless way to die. But as far as I can tell, on balance, the evidence seems to show that yeah, you're pretty much dead once your head's off. So that's good at least.
Yeah, yeah. I guess it remains to know if like the head still functions afterwards, right? Like
Yeah.
for some moment, maybe. Or the
Yeah.
yeah.
So since it's not in the script, we can get into it now. But there's not like, there was a guy called, I forget his name, in like the early 1900s who witnessed an execution and would try to do like science on the scaffold and watch, this guy, they chopped this guy's head off. The guy's name was Longhi, and he waited for after the execution, after the head was chopped off, and he like pointed the head toward himself and just yells in his face, Longhi! And he says the guy's eyes opened up and he looked at him.
Oh wow.
Uh,
Oh, that's
but it's
fine.
never been repeated. We don't really know.
Yeah.
What a pain in the ass. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, right, like, man, I thought we were done here. I thought once the head came off, I was going to be like, didn't have to deal with assholes yelling at me anymore. And then this guy. So the guillotine is one of the most influential technologies ever to come out of France, right up there with the bicycle, right up there with milk that doesn't have E. coli in it. The guillotine is one of the best French inventions of all time. Over here in America, we don't think about the guillotine very much. When we do think about it, it's usually we're thinking about Marie Antoinette. We know she famously spent a ton of state money on various luxurious silks and had a whole farm built on the grounds of Versailles so she could cosplay being a farmer. And then she was beheaded by angry, starving peasants after telling them to eat cake. That's pretty much the average American's image of Marie Antoinette and the guillotine,
Mhm.
which makes Marie Antoinette into a symbol for us of like the idle, ultra rich exploiter class, right? She sort of stands for your Donald's Trump, your Elon's Musk, your Zucks, and so the guillotine ends up representing sort of the righteous anger of the working class. It's a powerful symbol of that, but in these episodes we're going to talk our way through how the guillotine was actually employed in real life, and I hope to convince our listeners that this isn't a machine that has never really been a weapon of the working class, and that like if you see the guillotine as a tool for chopping off the heads of the rich, you're missing its real fundamental purpose in society.
Mhm.
So, what would you say the guillotine's purpose is?
Well, I guess to chop heads.
Precisely.
it's
Precisely.
pretty, it's pretty simple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Episode over. No, I mean, you could it chops heads, right? But like, it's a way to kill people, right? You kill
Mhm.
got people you need killed, boom, chop their head off, dead. But killing people's pretty simple. You don't really need a whole machine to kill people. There's like hundreds of ways to kill people. Most of them you can do without a whole, rope and pulley system and a special copper bucket. But executing people is much more complicated than just killing people. Because when a state decides to execute someone, they need to make it mean something, right? You can't just kill people any old way. You have to surround it with symbolism and ritual in order to make it the meaning of the execution unmistakable.
Right,
Otherwise, people might just think it's state approved murder, right?
right, right. So that's, I guess there's a public aspect of the guillotine, right? Like that it's
Right.
on the public place with like people attending, and also le bourreau, which is obviously like
Yes,
covering his head. It's almost like some sort of weird ritual, right?
exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's a weird ritual, and like rituals are there to mean something to the people
Hmm.
who participate in them and see the stuff about the executioners I read up on was fascinating. That like for a long time the executioners would be, I mean, all pretty much in the UK and also in France and throughout the rest of Europe. If you were an executioner, like chances are your father was an executioner and your grandfather was an executioner, all the
Okay.
way going back like five or
Interesting.
six generations.
That's
Uh,
generational trauma, I guess, right? Like right
right.
there.
Who else can deal with it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just what you want to be a doctor? No son of mine is going to be a doctor. Yeah, so the state, the specific meaning of what you want to convey with the execution constrains what kind of executions you're going to decide to do. So for example, if you want to convey a message that like the state's right to execute derives from its rational, methodical process of judgment, you might pick a sciency execution method like the lethal injection or the electric chair, like we do over here. If you want to convey that a witch is the embodiment of sin and sin has to be purged from the world, then burning at the stake might be the way
Fire.
to go. So whoosh, right? Doesn't get much purgier than that. If the meaning you want to convey is that chewing gum is a nasty, gross habit, then you might execute your victim by turning her into a giant blueberry and having Oompa Loompas roll her down into a garbage chute, right? It's all about the symbolic weight of it, um, right? And there's no weight more pointed or symbolic than the blade of the guillotine. A device so primed for meaning that more than 230 years after its heyday and almost 50 years after its last use, it still regularly shows up on protest signs all the way over here, standing for ideas that neither its inventors nor its earliest victims could ever have imagined in their time.
Wow.
Right? It just like stands up there and it just like gets in your head, so
Yeah.
to speak. So, Johan, have you ever been drawn and quartered?
Sorry?
You ever been drawn and quartered?
No.
You know what a drawn and quartered is? It's
Mm, mm.
in French they call it l'écartèlement.
Okay, yeah, yeah. No, I
Yeah,
have
yeah, yeah.
I haven't been. Yeah.
Doesn't seem like a good time.
Nah.
Um, yeah, this is the one. So if you don't know drawing and quartering, this is the one where they tie your arms and legs up to four horses, and they have all the horses walk in different directions.
Yeah, that's right.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
There was something with a wheel as well, no? Like that they would spin and it would just like dismember you.
Yeah, they did. They came up with a lot of stuff, man. Uh, there was so the wheel. We'll talk about the wheel a little bit, but that was the if you're being broken on the wheel. Apparently, it mostly involved just having a big wagon wheel smashed down on top of your bones over and over.
Yeah.
Um, not not super good, but drawing and quartering was the one they reserved for like the worst possible
Mm.
punishment of people. Maybe the most famous guy to be drawn and quartered, at least in France, is this guy called François Ravaillac.
Okay.
So Francois is the guy who, in 1610, jumps into the royal carriage, stabs King Henry IV twice in the chest, and kills him. Now, we don't know exactly why Ravaillac murdered the king in 1610. We know he's a devout Catholic and he thinks Henry IV isn't doing enough to like bring Protestants back into Catholicism.
Hmm. Hmm.
You guys were on this Protestantism Catholicism thing for a long fucking time.
Yeah.
Could not let it go. We know Ravaillac had a lot of resentment toward his absolute dirtbag of a father who left him when he was a kid, and also toward a lot of other male authority figures. You know, this is a common pattern. Now we know he's particularly angry at monks because Ravaillac briefly joined a monastic sect, but then he got kicked out because he was having visions.
Mm.
And the visions are important. He would have visions like he would feel like his feet were on fire. He would smell sulfur that wasn't there. He would had visions of himself playing a trumpet of war, like he was starting a war by and fighting in a war alongside other soldiers. In the modern day, we would probably diagnose this guy with a mental illness, but you know this is the
Oh,
15
oh,
1600s,
oh, it would take psychedelics, maybe
right?
some
And there
good
was
gems.
right. There were
Yeah.
psychedelics in everything back then. Like
Right.
we didn't
Yeah.
have pasteurization yet, right?
That's right. That's right.
Right. So it's all over the street. This is just mushrooms growing everywhere. You trip down an alleyway, accidentally eat some mushrooms, and now you're tripping your way back out of the alleyway. But these visions were with him his whole life. Ravaillac definitely does not have a coherent reason for wanting to kill the king. He's much more of like a John Hinckley Jr., who was the guy who tried to kill Reagan, than like a John Wilkes Booth, who was the guy who tried to kill uh, who killed Lincoln, right? John Hinckley Jr. believed that if he assassinated Ronald Reagan, then Jodie Foster would finally notice him and fall in love with him. That was much more of a Ravaillac sort of
I see
thinking
it.
to it.
Yeah.
He's like a lone wolf with some mental problems who feels compelled to kill an important man, and that important man is the king. One thing we do know about Ravaillac is that he's not afraid to die. He goes and talks to priests 1608, 1609, the years leading up to the assassination, but he never tells them exactly what he's planning to do because he, quote, feared that he would be put to death for the intention rather than the deed. Right? If he tells the priests too much, then
Mm.
they'll report him to the
Hmm.
authorities and, right. So he doesn't tell them exactly what he's going to do, but he hints at it and he knows he's going to die for it when he does kill the king. Like he's not going
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
survive. And then in 1610 he goes ahead and does it. Just pops right in there, boop boop, king is dead. So
Done.
after Ravaillac, done, right? It was really easy, not that hard to kill a king in 1610. He's just in his carriage driving around.
Yeah. It's not like you have
Um,
snipers on the roof and
right.
stuff like that.
Right. Nowadays, I imagine it would be pretty hard. I've never looked into it. So after Ravaillac murks the king, he immediately surrenders to the king's guard because there's an angry mob outside the carriage yelling, "He must die," and trying to rip him apart. So, free ride to the prison in a cozy carriage sounds pretty nice compared to getting ripped apart right now. But unfortunately for our boy Frankie, killing the king happens to be the only crime in France that you can get drawn and quartered for.
Mm.
It's such a cruel punishment and so complicated to do, so time consuming that it's reserved for regicides. And I think we all know enough about drawing and quartering that I don't have to go into the gory details of drawing and quartering. But if you haven't read the gory details recently, it's even more heinous than you probably remember. It's an all-day affair. It involves
Oh
mallets,
wow.
it involves hot sulfur. It's like it's shit Jigsaw from the Saw movies would look at and be like, "Woof, really?
Wow.
I don't know,
Yeah.
guys." So it's bad, and it serves three basic functions. Okay, function number one: it's supposed to deter crime. Right? Henry IV's son, who's the king now, doesn't want some other crazy Catholic motherfucker to stab him. So the idea is this complicated public torture demonstration ought to make people think twice about killing another king. And it would probably deter me personally. Like, no, thank you. Um, but on the other hand, deterrence doesn't work on everyone.
Probably this guy would not have been deterred, right? Like, because he knew what was gonna happen. So there's probably some like him that would be
Yeah,
ready to do it as well.
he knew exactly what was going to happen. But he's getting visions from God, right? It's like deterrence doesn't work if you're trying to impress Jodie Foster or if God tells you need to start a religious war. So strike one. Another function drawing and quartering serves is it reinforces the king's connection to God because when Ravaillac finally dies, they believe his soul is going to go up to heaven, is going to go up to be judged by God by at the pearly gates, right? And unless those visions really were from God, God is going to be pissed that this guy killed his boy Henry IV. So on the day of the execution, you've got all these cardinals and ministers and everybody up there giving speeches about how this punishment is actually an act of mercy, and the king can absolve you from even the worst sin by subjecting you to this hellish torture.
Hmm.
So that's idea number two of drawing and quartering. Sort of present that message to people. Hopefully they believe it. And last but not least, drawing and quartering creates an opportunity for collective vengeance. It gets the people together in the street. There's nothing like ripping apart a corpse with your bare hands in a feral rage to bring people together. Really reminding them that the king is on their side. If there's an injustice, the king is going to make sure that they get a chance to that you get a chance to live out your bloodthirst. Which is too bad. Like Ravaillac wanted to go get in the carriage instead of getting ripped apart by the crowd. He ended up getting ripped apart by the crowd anyway. Would have been better off just like doing some crowd surfing after he
Definitely.
came out of that carriage. So anyway, if you kill the king, you get drawn and quartered. So that's a bad one. Definitely don't kill the king in France in 1610. Now, if you didn't kill the king, but the French state still wants you dead, how are they going to execute you? It depends. Are you a noble or at least wealthy? Then you might get to be beheaded with a
Hmm.
sword or an axe. Quick, relatively honorable, a bit messy, but hey, you're not the one who has to clean up after, right?
Exactly.
So if you're not a noble, if you're a commoner, then you probably either get hanged or if you've done something really, really bad, you get broken on the wheel, like we talked about
Mhm.
earlier. You can look this up. What that is, it's not great. They're just like smashing you with a big old wagon wheel, uh, and uh, you don't get to. They don't do that to you if you're a noble, right? Nobles get to be beheaded. So it's sort of a two-tiered system of justice, and
Mm.
that's exactly the sort of thing that's going to be on the chopping block in June of 1789 when the revolution pops off. You know, we people talk a lot of shit about the French, but boy, do you guys know how to put on a capital R revolution. It's amazing. Um,
Yeah. I think we still have like a bit of a revolutionary flair, right?
Hell yeah.
I found kind of funny because I live in the US for a while, right? Like, and I remember seeing a protest. I think it was in San Francisco in front of a Notre, and you had like I don't know 5 people like walking around with like a little sign and like what is this? Like this is not how you strike. This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
First you lock up the CEO in his office and you chain him to the radiator. And yeah, it's interesting how and I've seen actually in France, like I've seen some very violent like protest and things like that. Like we know how to make a point where it's needed, I guess. Yeah,
That's for sure.
there should be
That's for sure. Yeah, we don't know
some
how to do it.
training, like yeah,
We got to send our revolutionaries over there for sure.
yeah, yeah,
And it keeps coming back. Like every generation, you guys are like, we need to fuck some shit up. Let's fuck some shit up.
for sure.
Um, I love it. The French Revolution's fantastic. It's got everything. It's got half naked ladies waving bloody flags. It's got a whole. They invented a whole new calendar that has days named after vegetables. You got thousands of women storming Versailles with pitchforks and threatening to stab the king. It's just like an S tier revolution. No notes.
Mhm.
Maybe some notes, but we'll get there. So anyway, the French Revolution. There's a new constituent assembly that's making laws, and they're just throwing all the old feudal privileges into the bonfire. You know, special hunting rights for nobles, blammo. Tax exemptions for aristocrats, au revoir, mon gars. Tithing, where you have to pay 10% of your income to the church. How about the church
Yeah.
can have 10% of my ass, they say. And it's into this bonfire of privileges that a doctor named Joseph Ignace Guillotin casts the two-tier execution system. So Guillotin is not exactly an A-list revolutionary figure. You know, he's no Georges Danton or like Jean-Paul Marat, but he's a respected man of science, right? He's
Yeah.
he's a doctor. He's been elected to the National Assembly, so he's no slouch. One of Guillotin's lesser known claims to fame is that on June 20th, 1789, when King Louis XVI has his little pissy fit and locks the Third Estate delegates out of their chambers, and everybody's milling around being like, well, shit, we can't make laws if we can't get into our lawmaking room. What do we do now? Guillotin is the guy who pipes up, like, I know a tennis court we could go to. If you guys don't mind making laws on a tennis court, we could try that. And that's how we get the famous tennis court oath, where a lot of people consider the first official act of the revolution, where all these Third Estate delegates, meaning they're legal representatives of the commoners as opposed to the nobility or the clergy. These guys are basically declare themselves the only legitimate legislative body. And I have the painting here, of course, the famous Jacques Louis David painting of the tennis court oath. Guillotin's in there somewhere. He's probably thinking, boy, I hope people remember me for thinking of going to this tennis court rather than anything else I might do in my career. So these guys take over tennis court. They start making laws. They get started right away. And on August 4th, 1789, in one crazy night, they just throw out all the old unequal laws, which is all the laws. They basically just abolish feudalism in one night of crazy lawmaking. And the next day, the delegates wake up feeling like shit. They're all like, oh, what did we do last night? Did we rip up all the laws? Fuck. Now we're going to have to write all new laws.
And there was no chat GPT, so it's a lot of work to write that.
Right.
Imagine if now our laws would be actually rewritten by AI. That would be interesting.
This is a genuinely sharp constitution. And it proves that France is not just a group of people vying for rights, but a nation. So they're writing laws. They got to write all their laws by hand, like fucking chumps, and they got to write laws on everything, and that includes criminal punishment. There needs to be a new penal code. So our boy Guillotin takes an active hand in writing this penal code. He gets involved in this largely because he's against the death penalty. He wants to ban the death penalty. Yeah,
That's a miss.
I know.
Oops.
Yeah. He's got big aspirations, you know? It's amazing. Because they won't let him ban the death penalty. They're like, well, we need to be able to kill people. Otherwise, what's the point of having a state? So he doesn't get anywhere with banning the death penalty. So instead, he tries to do what he can to make execution a little bit more humane and a lot more egalitarian. So in October of 1789, he puts forth a proposal that, first of all punishments for the same class of crime shall be the same, regardless of the criminal. In other words, no more special fancy punishments for nobles. Everybody gets punished the same way. And second of all, when the death penalty is applied, it will be by decapitation carried out by a machine. So he's the guy. That's the reason his name gets attached to this. Is he's the one who comes up with the idea for doing it with a machine.
I see. I see.
But he's trying to be a humanitarian here. He's trying to say like, well, let's not do it in a painful way. Let's not rip people's arms and legs off with horses. Let's not smash them with a wheel. Let's just have a machine that can quickly and painlessly take off the head, which he's quoted maybe apocryphally as saying, "In the twinkling of an eye, my machine will take your head off."
Yeah, it did.
Yeah, it sure did. That's how the the newspapers get a hold of the fact that this twinkling of an eye quote, and everybody, the common people out on the streets, are like making up songs about how Guillotin's gonna cut your head off in the twinkling of an eye, and the songs all get spread around, and everybody starts calling this thing the machine guillotine, and the name sticks.
Yeah.
Which is funny, but it's also a shame. Too bad for this guy. Really fucked up.
So did he design it actually?
He didn't. No, he did not. He's not to build it.
Okay, I see. I see.
It was just his idea to make there be a machine. He sort of he project managed it.
I see. Yeah. Yeah. And who did the POC?
The guy who did the POC is the guy we're going to talk about next, which is Antoine Louis. He's one of three important Louis in this story. So let's keep him straight. Antoine Louis is the guy who invents the guillotine. They don't actually call it the guillotine at first because they're still working inside their administrative bubble. They call it the Louisette after Antoine Louis. So Louis sets up shop in Paris, and he's testing different techniques. He's iterating on his POC. He's mostly using sheep to test, and he goes through like a lot of sheep. Just move fast and cleave things, as I guess. One challenge that comes up with the sheep is that if you have the blade if the blade goes, oh, I love that. You have a European police klaxon. I love to hear
That's
that.
right. Yeah, yeah.
We never get to hear those over here. Our sirens are terrible. So he's going through sheep, and one challenge that comes up is that if you want to you have to get the shape of the blade right. If you have a blade that's straight across, that's no good. That's chopping, right?
Okay.
Works for carrots. But as anyone who's ever broken down a chicken can tell you, if you want to get through muscle and bone and tendons, you got to be slicing, not chopping.
Right.
Chopping's not going to work. So they try a convex blade, sort of like a half moon shaped blade, so that it maybe is more of a slicing motion, but still not great. Tends to get gummed up in the sheep vertebrae. Everybody's had that problem. And so now I got some trivia for you, Johan. Do you know who it is who apparently finally comes up with the blade design that works correctly? I'll give you a hint. It's a guy who famously likes to tinker with locks and other machines.
Huh.
King Louis the 16th.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah, apparently this is from the diaries of the executioners, so they may, they may have thrown in some tall tales in here, but at least according to legend, King Louis the 16th visits Antoine Louis's lab to see how this nifty new head slicing machine is coming along, and he's the guy who's like, oh, you ought to make it cut at an angle like a paring knife, because that's really going to slice right through the neck, man. And he's
And
like,
boom.
anyway, it's really coming along, buddy. Can't wait to see it in action. Peace out.
Interesting. Was there anything with like also how tall the machine should be so the gravity like you get the acceleration right? Like there's a lot of parameters when you think about it, right? That to make
Right?
sure that it does what it needs to do. It needs to be heavy
There's a
enough, I
lot.
guess.
There's a lot to think about,
Yeah.
right? It needs to work. It doesn't need. It don't need. It only needs to do one thing, but it needs to do that thing every time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a bunch of different ways you could do it, right? But the way they're working with late 1700s technology, so what they end up with is they have a 3 meter tall pair of uprights held together with a crossbar at the top that's called the chapiteau. And 3 meters for our American listeners is about 10 feet. Uh, and hanging there's from the rope up at the top of the crossbar is a blade. That's the iconic, slanted blade that we all know and love, the guillotine. And that blade, on top of that blade, they have a 15 kilogram weight for maximum thud.
Mm,
15 kilograms is about 33 pounds. As anybody knows who's taken some physics, the weight doesn't make the blade fall any faster, but it sort of helps it power through. Once it hits the neck, it going whatever speed it's going, it helps it like power through the rest of the way down. 3 meters, I think, is just about what they were. I got to imagine like when they were now trying to like lug this thing out of the offices, they got to make it fit through the door like when you're moving a
right.
sofa.
Yeah, it's painful. I have a table that is one piece of 3 meters, so I can relate to. It's pretty small actually. I thought this device was actually much taller than 3 meters, but it makes sense, I guess. Yeah,
Yeah,
to get it like to move it around.
it feels like it would be taller, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
But I think it's just because it's up there on the scaffold. They put it on a scaffold, so it's up
That's
above
right. Yeah,
everybody,
yeah,
so it looks really
yeah,
tall. And then
yeah,
when in paintings, they usually have like a flag flying behind it, so it looks like
yeah, yeah,
it's really
yeah.
way up there. But yeah, 3 meters still, 3 meters is enough. That'll get the head off. So the victim or client, as the executioners say, sometimes they say package, but the client is laid chest down on a platform, and his or her head goes through this semicircular hole at the base of the uprights, and a cross piece is placed over the top. The cross piece is called the lunette,
Mhm.
over the back of the neck, so that the head stays in place. And then the executioner releases the rope. The blade assembly falls under its own weight. It runs along little tracks cut into the uprights, so it goes straight
Mhm.
down. And if all goes well, whip thud, head drops into a basket. The body gets shoved off the platform into a big box, which can hold up to 4 bodies at a time. And the blade is cleaned and raised back up to the crossbar, and we're ready to go again.
Mm. I mean, why did they even clean it? The real question.
Mm. I think the main reason they
I
cleaned
mean,
it is because
yeah.
it cuts better if
Oh,
it's clean.
okay. Yeah. Did
Yeah,
did they have sometimes
right.
to actually sharpen it again?
Yes.
Yeah.
Um, but they not between executions, I think. because
Right.
that would take a long time. You had to disassemble the thing
Mm.
and take the blade
Nice.
out
Yeah.
and sharpen it. Right.
Yeah.
That was one of the reasons. That was one of the big problem. The reasons that the executioners were so excited about the guillotine is because they would have to, when they were doing the executions with swords or axes, they would have to either sharpen the sword every time, which takes forever,
Mhm.
or they had to have like 30 swords ready every time. And if any of them's not sharp enough, then you're hacking. And when you
Mm.
start hacking, it makes the crowd angry, and sometimes people would run up and
Right.
beat the shit out of the executioner. So the guillotine's better for that.
So I guess like one improvement that could have been done would be to remove the blade and put another one easily, right? A bit like
Hmm.
razors, basically. That would have been probably a V2.
Yes. Well, we'll get to V2 actually.
Okay.
Although they didn't do that. They didn't do that for V2, but they did make it a lot more. They made a lot of really good improvements.
Anyone thought about doing like sort of a guillotine with parallel tracks? So like they all come together and for groups.
uh, They should have, because they certainly had a lot of groups to execute in the
Yeah.
subsequent several years. Yeah, they didn't think about that. You know, uh, I guess it didn't. I guess it wasn't that important for them all to get executed at the same time, right? You got
Mhm.
them. They're tied
Yeah.
up already. Um,
Yeah.
it can wait, and the longer it takes, the longer people are down there cheering
Yeah.
and
Strike.
saying,
Yeah.
"Yay!
That's
Thank
right.
you, thank
Yeah.
God for Robespierre."
Mhm.
So that's the guillotine. This baby's got a peak throughput of 20 heads an hour, and she's ready to drop some major justice. Let's see how she performs. So the first person to be executed by guillotine is a guy named Nicolas Jacques Pelletier. He's a run-of-the-mill mugger, but during a mugging he accidentally kills somebody and he gets collared, so now he's waiting in jail. And he's actually been waiting in jail for several months because they captured him before the revolution. And before anybody got a chance to execute him, the revolution happened, and they made this new law that you could only be executed by guillotine. But of course, they don't have a guillotine yet.
Mm.
So Pelletier has just been hanging out in jail, waiting for this technological breakthrough that's going to disrupt his neck, which is not the norm in 1792, right? It's the
Yeah.
norm now for prisoners
Yeah.
on death row to wait months
Right.
or years before
Right. Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
executed. But
Yeah.
usually in 1792, once you're condemned to death, they're like, well, no sense keeping this guy around. He's just gonna, we're just gonna have to keep feeding him. So they've got you out on the gallows the next day. Bada bing, bada boom.
Mm.
Right. So this is pretty rare. And the judge in Pelletier's case writes to the French Minister of Justice asking him, in the name of humanity, to please speed up the development of this machine for the sake of, quote, the unfortunate man condemned to death who realizes his fate and for whom each moment that prolongs his life must be a death for him.
Interesting. Which leads me to this question that I've always asked myself about why do we keep people on, or why you guys more precisely keep people on death row for such a long time, right?
Right.
Because that's their ultimate cruelty somehow.
Yes. And you guys did it too. It has more to do with the growth of like the legal apparatus and
Hmm.
the how often things will be appealed and you have to go back through the
Hmm.
bureaucracy of the courts and come back and then it'll be appealed again, right?
So, yeah.
Right? Because nobody wants to be the government can't have it be said that like they didn't give somebody a fair shake before they executed them. So instead, they keep him in jail for 20 years. Hooray!
Right.
Um, Camus wrote about this in his. Well, one of the sources for this episode was Camus' reflections on the guillotine,
Mhm.
and he wrote about this how uh, the punishment really once you have what the death penalty itself is actually quick and painless. The punishment becomes having to sit in jail for years thinking about how you're going to have to be executed.
Right. Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah.
Um, so so anyway, the Pelletier's waiting in jail. The thing's not ready. It's like this is the part of the software development process where there's a project manager's pinging the engineering team about a blocker, right? They finally get the machine ready, and a crowd comes out to watch this execution with this brand new machine, and it sounds a little something like this. That's what it sounds
Mm.
like.
Yeah. Sounds about right.
It's uh it's kind of disappointing. The crowd, it's like it's not that much of a spectacle, right?
Yeah.
Nobody's screaming, nobody's begging for mercy. There's no bones
Mm.
cracking. It's just like thud, everybody go
Done.
home.
Yeah.
Yeah. People actually shouted that from the crowd, we want the gallows back.
Hmm. Interesting.
So at this point, we can kind of see that thanks to the revolution and thanks partly to Guillotin's new law, capital punishment in France has been robbed of a lot of its oomph. Right, the divine redemption function is gone because they're a secular government now. They're not making any claims about capital punishment redeeming your soul. You know, if you want your soul redeemed, go see a priest. The deterrence function has taken a big hit because death by guillotine is swift and painless. There's no sulfur, no mallets, no horses. You know, we should have some doubts about whether painful punishments even work as a deterrent for the reasons we talked
Hmm.
about earlier. Because like, if Pelletier killed somebody by accident, he wasn't thinking he might be broken on the wheel or whatever. He was just trying to get some money. Ravaillac did know he was in for an excruciating death, and he did it anyway. So nobody was
Hmm.
deterred. But
Right.
in any
Yep.
case, right, even if you think capital punishment is an effective deterrent, the guillotine is terrible for that because it doesn't hurt.
Right.
And then finally, there's the collective revenge function, bringing people together to rage against some common enemy, which the guillotine is also terrible for because it's boring. It's got no pizzazz. It's got no
Hmm.
style.
Hmm. And probably there's a domino effect to this, right? Like if you know that you're gonna be killed, then you might as well kill everyone who's on site and just leave no witnesses.
Right.
Go to the end of it, right? Like it's gonna be
Yeah.
the same penalty anyway, the same outcome. So
Oh, that's a good point. Right. They can't do something worse to you. They're constrained by law to
yeah,
chop your head off with this machine.
yeah.
Well, that might be what the serial killer that we'll talk about in part two was thinking. Yeah, I think you're right. I think that the egalitarian point of it had this perverse effect to some extent where everybody understood that like there's nothing you can do so bad that the state will do anything worse to you than the guillotine.
Hmm.
Hadn't thought about that.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
So the new French Republic has a catch-22. The guillotine is now literally part of its law code. It's legally required to use this machine to carry out executions, but the machine, by its nature, has accidentally eliminated most of the reasons for having the death penalty in the first place. Fortunately for the new French state, the revolution is about to get a leader with a bold new vision for what capital punishment can be. And that leader is, that's right, Mr. Guillotine himself, Maximilien François Marie Isidore de Robespierre, architect of the Reign of Terror.
Hmm. Hmm.
You guys learn a lot about Robespierre in school, and when you go in school in France, talk about Robespierre a lot.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, yeah, but pretty early in school, actually. I would say maybe when we are like I don't know, like 10 or 11 or something like that. I guess.
Okay,
Um, yeah,
so you're left with kind of an image
but the
more
name
than
is
a
yeah, right.
story.
Yeah, yeah,
He has a bad
that's
reputation, right? He
right.
gets a lot of shit, and that's not unfair because he really was a power mad little gremlin. But you have to remember in fairness to Robespierre, the revolutionary government in 1793 has a lot on its plate. 3 years earlier, in 1790, they adopted this thing called the Civil Constitution of the Clergy, which, among other things, says if you want to be a priest in France, you have to sign an oath rejecting the authority of the Pope. Now, I don't know how much
Mm-hmm.
you know about Catholic priests, Johann, but I did some research, and it turns out the Pope is a pretty big deal with these guys.
I have an uncle who's a Catholic priest.
But would you describe him as pro-Pope?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
There you go. The Pope's important. So this oath, they have to make all the priests sign this oath that they won't support the Pope over the revolutionary government. A lot of priests just won't sign it, right? This is before Robespierre, but now he inherited this problem. The government has to deal with the problem of, well, what do we do with all these priests who won't sign the oath? There ends up being this whole underground network of priests who are still secretly loyal to the Pope. And there's also a very much above ground, huge Catholic loyalist uprisings in multiple provinces, just like big Catholic armies that are making life hard for Paris. And all the while, the French are fighting a war against the goddamn Austrians. So Austria invades France in 1792, and France fights them off, but they're liable to come back anytime and invade again at any moment. And if they do invade, they might link up with these rebel armies and possibly even use these secret priest networks to undermine Paris from the inside, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It feels paranoid now to talk about it, but it was a very real fear for them because they were like on the brink of getting just like clobbered by Austria at all times. Plus, as if the Catholic menace weren't enough, there are these massive revolts in Lyon and Marseille by federalists who are people who think that too much power has been concentrated in Paris in the hands of radical Jacobins like Robespierre, which is definitely true. They're not wrong about that, as they're about to find out. So, and then to make matters worse, in July of 1793, a young Normand named Charlotte Corday spends days outside the home of Jean-Paul Marat, an important ally of Robespierre, petitioning to get inside so she can warn Marat about an uprising that's been planned in Normandy.
Mm-hmm.
And on July 13th, I can see you smiling. I know you know what's about to happen. Corday finally gets in. She spends 15 minutes alone with Marat in his bathroom while he's taking a medicinal bath for a skin disease that he has. And he's writing down all the names she's telling him about these resistance members. And he's like, finally tells her, all right, thank you, ma'am. I'll make sure all these people are guillotined. At which point, Corday stands up and stabs Marat in the chest with a 5-inch kitchen knife. And he bleeds out into his bathtub. I have a painting here from 1860 by Paul Baudry. I really like this painting. I think she looks like a star. So, some people will say she looks afraid here, like, oh, what did I do? That's not what it looks like to me. She looks like she's saying, well, somebody had to do it. You know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I don't think that's fear, right? Like it
That's
doesn't.
not fear.
No.
She's impassive, I would say.
Yeah.
He's got a map on the wall of probably of the progress of the war, and he's down here looking pretty fucking dead.
Oh yeah.
Yep. Got that knife in his chest. Yeah, I think this is a pretty he's got the newspaper on the floor, the chair she stood up in that tipped over, and the newspaper that fell over. He's not going to have to worry about the news anymore. I love it.
That's a nice picture.
That's 1860. There's a David one from the 1700s that I don't like as much. And that's more, that's more about Marat. I don't even think Corday's in that one. I think it's just Marat dying in the bathtub, which is kind of missing the point. So all this is to say, like, Robespierre is having a lot of people problems in 1793, but he's got a solution to his people problems, and that solution is scale. So this is the beginning of the 11 months that will come to be known as the Reign of Terror. This this is where the guillotine really hits its stride, you know?
It's a productivity tool.
Yeah, right? They're figuring out how to scale this cool disruptive tech. And the executioners love it because they were already understaffed. The executioners were already, you can only have one from one family at a time. So, it's a force multiplier.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so the Reign of Terror starts with mostly with aristocrats being executed, right? Like Marie Antoinette, like we talked about earlier, is the one everybody knows about. A lot of aristocrats end up with their heads in baskets, but this is this is what I think a lot of Americans fail to realize about the guillotine. It doesn't just stop with the nobles, right? They don't just kill the nobles and they're like, great, all the nobles are dead. We can be a country now. It can't stop with the nobles because there's no such thing as nobles anymore. They outlawed nobles, right? So
Right.
everybody's the same now. And so they passed this thing called Robespierre's like incredibly paranoid, not for bad reason because his buddy Marat was just stabbed in the bathtub. And so they passed this thing called the Law of Suspects, which is the law that really gives the Reign of Terror its legitimacy. It says you can be arrested simply for being suspected of counter-revolutionary activity. And if and you are like guilty until proven innocent. You have to prove your own innocence.
Really see. Mm-hmm. So how many people died?
16,594
Wow.
during the Reign of Terror. Yeah. 16,594 men and women have been executed by guillotine by the end of the Reign of Terror. We know that number exactly because this was like a paperwork machine. This is a bureaucracy, a bureaucracy of just like filling out forms for every execution that had to happen. About 8% of those people who died during the Reign of Terror at the guillotine are aristocrats. About 8%. Another 6% are priests and nuns. So that leaves the remaining 86%, which is roughly 14,200 victims, to be commoners. The vast majority of the terror's victims come from the lower classes. These people are, as the Oxford History of the French Revolution puts it, ordinary people caught up in tragic circumstances not of their own making, who made wrong choices in lethal times when indifference itself counted as a crime.
Yeah.
It's bad. It's real bad. And the guillotine is not. It's not just how it doesn't just happen to be how they did it. It's crucial. It's crucial for reaching this unprecedented scale of state killing. People have died in greater numbers than this in wars and plagues and massacres before this. This is the first time in history that a state has the technology to kill 20 people an hour legally, one at a time with the appropriate paperwork. Right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And in a way, it rescues capital punishment from irrelevance. It's too painless to be a deterrent, but the inevitability of itself, the scale and the arbitrariness of all this execution becomes the deterrent. You don't want to do anything that might get you even suspected of being against the government because they're not going to hesitate to put you on the scaffold.
Let's see. Mm-hmm.
And it serves the collective revenge function too, because people may not get out of bed to go watch a single mugger get guillotined, but they'll sure as hell turn out to see 13 nuns in a row. I mean, that's like Game of Thrones right there.
How big was the audience?
For the important ones, for like the ones that people were really interested in, it would be the whole Place de la Concorde. So, 10,000, 15,000 people watching.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
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 So before we end part one, I want to talk about the name Guillotine because we talked about how it came out of a song that people were singing, and they started calling it the machine guillotine, and that's it. That's like that gives it the momentum to become the name that everybody calls it. It can't go back after that and give it a different name.
For sure.
Guillotin, the guy, dies in 1814, but his family is like really embarrassed that their name is now attached to this killing machine, especially when their patriarch wanted to end capital punishment. It's like awful. But they go petition the state. They're like writing petitions to the state over and over again to change the name to something else. They can't they can't change the name. That's what it's called. I don't know what to tell you, man. Right? The meaning the meaning of the word has gotten away from them.
Yeah. Did anyone interview Guillotin and ask him about like, hey, how do you feel about this?
I don't think that we have anything from him about it because he was now like a lawmaker, and I think he saw the way things were going. The Jacobins are going to push the Girondins out of the way and execute a bunch of them, and then somebody else is going to push the Jacobins out of the way and execute a bunch of them. You know, he saw it playing out, and he probably was the safest thing to do was not make public statements about things. He died. He did not die at the guillotine. He died in 1814 under Napoleon. It was under Napoleon of natural causes. So he actually got out by keeping his fucking mouth shut. And of course, we know Louis the 16th, who invented the slanted blade.
Might have regretted it as well at some
Yeah,
point.
yeah,
For a short moment.
yeah. Well, it sure does look good up there. The Guillotin family actually is so embarrassed that they changed their own name once they realized they can't
Oh
change the
wow.
name of the guillotine. They filed the paperwork to have all of their name changed to something else.
Interesting.
So I was unable to find out what they changed it to. Probably they wanted to be more or less anonymous after this experience, but
Yeah.
I like to imagine they changed it to something meaningless and inoffensive like Hitler. Just something that couldn't offend anybody. After the Reign of Terror, the guillotine gets taken down from the scaffold. The government doesn't have to do mass. They don't have mass executions to do anymore, right? They're not using the guillotine multiple times a day, so they don't need this big eyesore hanging out in the Place de la Concorde, looming over everybody's heads all the time. It's creepy. They don't want it. But they can't get rid of it. The Constitution says they have to use it. And so even though they take the guillotine down, the Reign of Terror has made sure that the guillotine will continue looming up there on the scaffold in the imagination of every citizen for generations to come. And that is what we're going to talk about in part two.
Amazing.
Thank you, Johan, for being a
Thank you,
token
man.
Frenchman and a wonderful guest on this podcast. I hope you learned some stuff about the guillotine you didn't know.
I did for sure. Yeah. Yeah. There's an interesting artwork from Tom Sachs, which turns a guillotine into a Chanel guillotine.
Yeah, the Chanel
It's an interesting
guillotine.
one. Yeah.
And that's basically what we'll get to the Berger guillotine, the the guillotine V2 in part two. That's what you showed me the Chanel guillotine
Right.
artwork. That's based on like the new sexy model,
I see.
which is perfect for that. It's really
Nice. Nice.
it's really this kind of goes to show like what happens if you create a machine that's very good at its job, but
Yeah.
you fail to reckon with what that job means in society.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. When
Um,
was it? When was it actually put out of service?
that's spoilers. I don't want to talk about that
Okay.
yet.
Okay.
But
Okay.
I would love to
Spoiler.
hear your
Okay.
guess. What year do you think was the last execution by guillotine? By guillotine?
Huh. I don't know. Maybe end of the 18.
Give me a year.
Oh yeah. 1895. I don't know.
1895. All right, I'm just gonna write that down here and put it in the guest box, and then don't look it up because next week we're gonna find out whether that guess is correct. So this has been Technology Blows. I've been your host, Dan Slimman. This has been my wonderful guest, Johan Romfort. Please follow me at Dan Slimman on Instagram. Follow Tech Blows on TikTok. Subscribe to Technology Blows on YouTube. Tell all your friends who are interested in the guillotine that we've got an episode just for them. If you have any goth friends, tell them about it. They're going to love this episode. And most importantly, join me and Johan again next week for more Technology Blows.
Thank you.